She would never admit it aloud, but deep inside every woman lies a quiet, hidden point of vulnerability. It's not loud, not obvious, but it's there. A subtle thread that, when touched just right, unravels her defenses, scrambles her certainty, and draws her toward you with a force she can't explain. Machiavelli warned long ago, "Whoever controls perception controls desire." That insight wasn't poetic, it was surgical, because what you're about to understand is not chance, not charm, not sorcery, it's strategy. A method of seduction so calculated, so effective, and so effortless, it almost feels criminal. She will never speak of it. But there is a specific reaction, a silent reflex, triggered when a man appears with the perfect blend of presence, mystery, and restrained intention. This has nothing to do with how you look, what you earn, or the lines you rehearse in front of the mirror. It's about decoding the emotional structure of the feminine mind, the way Machiavelli decoded the psychological structure of power. When you master this invisible architecture, seduction becomes fluid, almost unfair. She begins to lean in, to linger, to imagine. And in her mind, it's not even you who initiated the game. It was her choice, or so she believes. It begins slowly, subtle, silent, intentional. The mistake that ordinary men make is confusing attraction with attention. Women are not attracted to the obvious. Obvious is predictable, and predictable is boring. What grips a woman's interest is the sensation that she's facing a man who sees deeper, moves slower, and holds back when others rush. Machiavelli said urgency reveals dependence, and dependence kills allure. So you never appear hungry, never desperate, never needy. You move like a man who already possesses what he desires. That's when she starts asking herself the most dangerous question of all. What is his secret? This is not about what you say. It's about how you are. You don't seduce her with words. You seduce her with presence, with micro-gestures, with the 1 second longer gaze, with the barely there smirk on the corner of your lips, with the comfort in silence that only a man with internal authority can embody. Women sense all of this with a sensitivity most men never even notice. She registers your posture. She catches the rhythm of your breath. She tracks how calmly you take up space. And all of it says one thing: you're not trying to impress. You already know who you are. Where most men talk too much, explain too much, praise too often to cover up their internal lack, Machiavellian seduction demands the opposite. You reveal less. You suggest more. You don't give her your full biography. You hand her scattered chapters, hints, ellipses, half sentences that awaken her imagination. And what her imagination builds in silence becomes your most powerful weapon. She begins to think of you in her own voice, and what she creates inside her mind is always more intimate than anything you could force into reality. This game is not played through logic, it's played through atmosphere. And you guide it as if holding fire between your fingers, firm enough that it doesn't extinguish, gentle enough that it doesn't burn. The art is making it all feel spontaneous. That's the Machiavellian elegance. You plant seeds that grow in her mind, and by the time she notices the pull, she's already entangled. Not because you pushed, but because you created the emotional climate that made her want to move forward on her own. Your energy speaks before your words ever arrive. Energy isn't mysticism, it's behavioral geometry. If you walk in anxious, she tightens up. If you show up insecure, she instinctively retreats. But if you arrive with the stillness of a man who has nothing to prove, her internal compass reorients toward you. That moment of curiosity is your entry point, the moment she wants to decode you. And once you awaken that curiosity, everything else flows. She watches you closer. She listens with deeper attention. She starts imagining things without even realizing she is. And this is the pivot. Seduction happens inside her, not in your words, not in your performance. Inside her. Women are drawn to perceived value, not displayed value. Flashy displays feel fake. But when your worth reveals itself through composure, through how you handle the unexpected, how you maintain calm when others unravel, that's when she takes notice. And she can't quite explain it, but she feels something different. A shift, a magnetism. It starts below language. The space between conscious and unconscious. That's where seduction becomes dangerous. Not because you manipulate, but because you operate in a dimension most men never touch. She starts adjusting her posture, playing with her hair, asking oddly specific questions. She glances at you with frequency, subtle movements, signals, and behind each one is the unspoken desire to be noticed. By you. You control the rhythm, and she adapts. But the key is never losing the air of ease. You move with lightness, charm, calm, as a man who could walk away at any moment. And because you could, she wants you to stay. The human brain assigns the most value to what it fears losing. Women understand this better than anyone, so when you carry yourself like a man who does not need but chooses, you become the one she wants to choose back. You resist the urge to accelerate. You don't rush to close the distance, because here's the truth. Women don't fall for force. They fall for invisible layers, slow layers, accumulating beneath her awareness until one day she realizes she's been wrapped in something she didn't see coming. You don't impress her. You shift her perception. You replace her idea of you with the one you want her to believe. And you do this by creating natural, consistent emotional impacts so small they bypass her defenses. The first shift is emotional air. You become her pause. In a world where everyone demands something from her, family, friends, work, society, you become the place she can simply exist. No competition, no performance, just a mirror that reflects her, unfiltered. This disarms her. Because you don't want anything from her. You are present by choice, not by lack. The second shift is controlled unpredictability. Not coldness, not absence, but a rhythm she doesn't fully control. You reply when you decide. You show up just slightly less than she expects. But when you do, your presence is unforgettable. You don't disappear for ego. You're just not available like a vending machine. And this contrast makes her recalibrate. She starts craving your time because you don't give it away easily. Now, your time has value. The third shift is selective attention. You don't validate everything. You don't compliment everything. But when you do, it hits. Because it's not automatic. It's intentional. She knows the difference. Saying you're beautiful is nice. But saying the way you touch your lips when you're thinking, that's hypnotic. That opens something primal. That says you notice what no one else sees. And that kind of attention is addictive. The fourth shift is emotional control. She will test you. And she should. She pokes, teases, creates friction, not to insult, but to see who you are, to feel your foundation. If you react with emotion, you collapse. But if you respond with humor, with relaxed strength, with unshakable calm, you win ground, not with words, with gravity. And in that gravity, you become untouchable. And then, the fifth shift. Presence without urgency. You don't rush touch. You don't force kisses. You let your body language do the quiet work. The lean of your face when you whisper. The casual brush of her arm. The held gaze that says more than words. When your energy is clean, calm, unhurried, she feels safe. And that safety becomes a space where her desire awakens. She starts to remember your words. She checks if you've seen her stories. She opens conversations she used to ignore. And more importantly, she tests more. That is your confirmation. Women test what they fear losing. If she's testing, you're already under her skin. And when that happens, you don't flinch. You don't scold. You don't explain. You guide. You lead. You remain still while everything else shakes. Because the moment she feels that you are the one man who sees her but doesn't chase her, everything changes. She starts to feel it even before she understands it. That pull, that intrigue, that growing curiosity about who you are and why your presence lingers long after you've left. It's subtle, but it's real, and it's spreading. She's noticing that when you're around, her energy shifts. Her attention narrows. Her thoughts wander more easily toward you. And even when she tells herself she's not interested, her body betrays her. The way her voice softens, the way she moves closer without meaning to, the way her eyes keep coming back to yours. These are not accidents. They are instinctive responses to the emotional atmosphere you've created. You haven't touched her yet, and you don't need to. You've touched something deeper, her perception. And the feminine perception is the doorway to desire. Once you influence how she sees you, you begin to control how she feels around you. And this is where most men fall short. They focus on what they want. You focus on how she feels. You create experiences, not arguments. You plant emotions, not demands. And the result is a woman who begins to lean into your world because yours feels more centered than hers. The reason this form of seduction feels almost illegal is because it bypasses resistance. It doesn't confront. It doesn't debate. It leads, softly, strategically. You're not dominating her will. You're awakening her instincts. You're not chasing. You're magnetizing. This difference is crucial. You show her that your presence is not a request. It's an offering. And that offering is rooted in stability. When she feels that your emotional state doesn't change based on her reactions, her mind begins to quiet around you. And when a woman's mind quiets, her body listens. Attraction, at this level, is no longer about what you do. It's about what she feels when she's near you. She begins to recognize that she's calmer with you, less performative, more natural. And that sense of ease becomes your greatest weapon, because no one else gives it to her. Everyone else is demanding, reactive, inconsistent. But not you. You're the eye of the storm, and that calm pulls her in deeper. Then comes the stage where she starts adjusting her behavior, subtly but clearly. She responds faster. She gives longer replies. She initiates more often. She references things you've said, even things you thought she didn't remember. And most telling of all, she begins offering care. Little things, checking in, asking questions, sending a song, a meme, a photo. These are not just casual gestures. They're signals of investment. She is becoming emotionally engaged. And when a woman reaches this stage, she wants you closer, but only if you maintain your axis. That's the paradox. The closer she wants you, the more you must appear not to need her. Not in arrogance, in centeredness. You do not change your rhythm. You do not rush. You remain the man she was drawn to in the first place. The moment you collapse into her energy, the spell breaks. But when you hold your position, her desire deepens. She begins to feel safe, not in a dull, domestic way, in a magnetic, mysterious way. Safe enough to be herself. Safe enough to speak about fears. Safe enough to share parts of her that no one else has access to. And when she does, you don't overreact. You don't try to fix. You simply receive. Your stillness becomes the mirror where she sees her own depth. And that experience is unforgettable. She begins to ask questions, not about facts, but about meaning. She wants to know what moves you, what you believe, what makes you angry, what makes you soft. She's not interviewing you. She's studying the terrain, mapping the emotional topography of the man she's becoming involved with. And you allow her to explore, but you do not give her the entire map. You share fragments, a story here, a memory there, just enough to make her feel chosen, just enough to make her crave more. This is how emotional dependency is born, not from neediness, not from pressure, from consistency, from calm mystery, from attention that feels deliberate, not desperate. You become her emotional compass, the reference point against which she evaluates her interactions with other men. She begins comparing, not because she wants to, but because your presence has become her baseline for what feels real. And then comes the shift. She begins initiating touch, lightly, casually, testing, seeing how you respond. She brushes your arm, lingers near your space, stands a little closer when she laughs. And when she does, you don't overreact. You don't rush. You don't pull her in. You simply match her energy with calm intention. You let the moment breathe. You know that in the space between stimulus and response lives the greatest power of all, controlled timing. Every pause is a choice. Every gesture is calibrated. You lean in when the atmosphere thickens, not a second before. You hold her gaze, but let her break it. You let your hand graze her skin, not forcefully, but as if her body drew it there. When the touch finally happens, it's not explosive. It's not performative. It's not rehearsed. It's quiet, slow, deep. A kiss that doesn't chase, but confirms everything she was already feeling. A seal on an unspoken agreement. Something real is happening here. And from that moment on, you exist in her body memory. Every time she sees your name, her heart rate shifts. Every time she hears your voice, her emotional state responds. Every time she remembers the kiss, a cascade of sensations awakens inside her. You didn't just impress her. You imprinted on her. That's the Machiavellian difference. You didn't sell her anything. You let her buy the experience with her own emotions. Now you enter the territory of psychological possession, not in a toxic, controlling way, in a magnetic, involuntary way. She begins to mirror you, not because she wants to copy you, but because she has accepted your emotional rhythm. Your language patterns become hers. Your energy becomes her comfort zone. She starts adjusting her tone, her timing, her desires to align with yours. This is where you start to consolidate, not by increasing pressure, but by increasing precision. You maintain emotional consistency. She knows what to expect from you, not because you're boring, but because you are stable. And stability is intoxicating in a world full of volatility. At the same time, you remain behaviorally unpredictable. A shift in tone, a sudden compliment, a quiet pause, a deeper gaze. These small disruptions keep her on edge, in a good way. They remind her that the man she's falling for still holds the reins, and that contrast is powerful. You're her safe place and her storm, her stillness and her tension, her peace and her intrigue. This duality makes her feel alive, and it draws her in again and again. Now she starts creating emotional memories around you. That look in the car, that silence that said everything, that joke that only the two of you understand. These moments become her mental souvenirs. She replays them when she's alone. She attaches meaning to them. They become her proof that this isn't casual. This isn't fleeting. This is something she doesn't want to lose. And when a woman fears losing you, not because of threats, but because of internal shifts, You've reached the point of irreversible desire. But even here, you do not accelerate. You do not get comfortable. You maintain the elegant distance, not emotionally detached, but strategically measured. You're not pushing her away. You're giving her space to step closer on her own. And she will. Because you are no longer a man. You are a feeling, a presence, a gravitational field. And she wants to orbit it, not because she has to, but because she can't imagine going back to a world where you don't exist. Now you begin to sense something shifting beneath the surface. She includes you in her daily rhythms without needing to announce it. She seeks your input, not for validation, but because your presence now anchors her experience. She has emotionally invested. Her body responds to your touch. Her mind responds to your presence. Her soul responds to your silence. And still, you do not change. You remain exactly as you were when the first spark ignited. Calm, steady, controlled, mysterious. This is the stage where other men collapse. They get too comfortable. They let their posture slip. They become reactive. They stop leading. But not you. Because Machiavellian seduction is not about peaking early and burning out. It is about maintaining the emotional tension with grace. You know the art is not in reaching the apex. It's in sustaining the energy once you're there. You understand something most men never learn. Seduction doesn't end with success. It deepens with consistency. The same steady energy that attracted her must remain. If anything, it becomes sharper, more deliberate. She needs to feel that the man who captured her attention is the same man who still walks beside her. And she will test for this, always. Not because she doubts you, but because she needs to confirm that her emotions are safe in your hands. This is where spontaneous emotional loyalty is born. Not out of a conversation, not out of a label, but from something far more powerful, her internal sense of truth. She begins to think to herself, "This is the man I don't want to lose." And that sentence doesn't need to be spoken aloud to shape her behavior. It guides everything she does, from the way she speaks to you to the way she thinks about you when you're not around. You never demand exclusivity. She offers it. You never ask to be her priority. She gives it willingly. And the irony is, the more you remain detached from needing it, the more she offers it freely. This is the silent victory of Machiavellian seduction. She believes she chose you every step of the way, because in a sense, she did. You simply designed the emotional terrain that made the choice feel inevitable. What makes it feel almost illegal is that you never violated her boundaries, never forced a move, never rushed a moment. You operated through controlled energy, elegant pauses, and masterful timing. And now, without ever asking for it, you have become the axis around which her emotions spin. But this does not mean you relax. Precision now matters more than ever. You maintain your masculine energy in its highest form, steady, intentional, composed. This is not stagnation, it's security. The kind that reassures her nervous system that she is with someone who won't crumble under pressure or drift when emotions deepen. You are the calm in her chaos. And because you do not react wildly to the waves of life, she clings to you in ways she doesn't even fully understand. At this point, she knows much of you, but not all. And that is exactly how it should be. You remain a comfortable mystery. She understands your rhythm, your core, but there are still stories you haven't told, depths you haven't revealed, layers she's still discovering. And that's what keeps her interested. It's not about hiding. It's about having more to reveal. She doesn't want a man she can predict completely. She wants a man whose presence invites exploration. And that's who you've become. A depth she wants to dive into, not out of obligation, but out of fascination. And then there's the physical bond. Now every touch carries more meaning, not just because of how it feels, but because of what it represents. You kiss her, but it's not just a kiss. It's a continuation of 1,000 microsignals she received over time. You touch her neck, and her breath changes, not just because of sensation, but because her body now associates your hands with emotional safety. You guide her body with just the right blend of strength and gentleness. You lean in close, but you don't overtake her space. You press your forehead to hers in silence. You hold her hand as if it anchors something larger than either of you can articulate. These are not gestures of seduction anymore. They are rituals of connection, and she feels that deeply. This is when she begins to share more than her thoughts. She begins to share her vulnerabilities, her fears, her insecurities, her private wounds. She opens not because she wants attention, but because she sees you as solid ground. And this is critical. You do not fix. You do not rescue. You simply hold the space with a steady gaze, few words, and full presence. And in doing so, you build unshakable trust. At this level, her tests become more refined. She delays responses to see if you wobble. She makes comments to provoke subtle jealousy. She disappears for a moment to observe your emotional gravity. But you already know the game. You don't overreact. You don't panic. You don't chase. You respond with the same calmness that first attracted her. And that steadiness keeps her desire burning. Because at her core, a woman is drawn to a man who is emotionally self-contained. A man who is a source, not a sponge. A lighthouse, not a raft. A man who leads, not to dominate, but to provide direction. Now comes the final turning point, the silent realization. She begins to fear losing you, not through panic, not through words, but through subtle shifts in her tone, her attention, her affection. She realizes that you are not just desirable. You are irreplaceable. You offer an emotional experience she hasn't found elsewhere, and probably never will. This is when you increase your elegance, your maturity, your quiet dominance. You don't use your power to trap her. You use it to elevate her. You make her feel respected, protected, understood, and that makes her want to stay. Not because she's obligated, because she's free, and still chooses you. You become the man she thought didn't exist, the one who sees her, truly sees her, and never collapses under the weight of her complexity. And this is where the final transformation occurs. You are no longer just a man. You are a reference point, an emotional standard, a sensory memory, a psychological imprint. She doesn't just desire you. She orients around you. And the reason it feels illegal is because of how effortlessly it all unfolded. You didn't chase her. You didn't trick her. You didn't overwhelm her. You became an experience she cannot replace, an energy that lives in her mind, her breath, her habits. She sees you in her routines. She hears your voice in her thoughts. She feels your absence even when she's surrounded by others. And in her own quiet way, she begins to revolve around you. But you remain composed. You remain grounded. You remain consistent. Because that's what makes her loyalty grow without pressure. It's not what you ask for. It's what you make her feel. And what she feels with you is something no other man gave her. This is the power of seduction, so refined, so subtle, and so effective that it no longer feels like a technique. It feels like truth, like gravity, like something ancient and inevitable. And in the end, when she looks at you, what she sees is not a man who took control, but a man who made control unnecessary. Because she wanted you, and believed all along that it was entirely her choice. That is the art,